N.T. Wright, on his latest episode of his podcast, answers the question, is online church real church? And it was an interesting kind of reply. He talks about the idea that obviously in emergencies, God can use all sorts of circumstances. And he talks about COVID, how quickly the church leaned into that moment. And he talks about in England, there wasn't this big challenge around, is it church? They know they needed to meet, so they started meeting. So he says, like, obviously in moments like that, it makes a lot of sense. But he does tell a really interesting story about 30 years ago when they were first broadcasting their church services, I think with the Church of England. They talked about, I guess one of the producers or something said, well, if somebody has like bread and wine with them and they participate in kind of the communion moment, is that church? And they had this conversation 30 years ago, and the answer was no, that church is real people gathering together in person. And he says ultimately that's what community is. Community is gathering together in person. But he also addresses that in, extreme circumstances, God still meets in those moments. And he talks about, what do they do with shut-ins with the Church of England, how they send people to participate with the sacraments. And I thought it was a really good answer for obvious reasons. Now, this is why I wrote my book, Online Church is Not the Answer, because I believe God can still use online and technology to reach people like shut-ins and even engage people beginning in the process. But doing life with other people, what biblical community is much more than just watching a stream on Sunday on YouTube and maybe being in a WhatsApp group. There's something more that we're wired for. But I don't want to discredit what God does in these online communities and these online expressions. And I think N.T. Wright answers this in a very dogmatic way that makes a lot of sense. But I also believe that over the next decade or so, we're going to see new technology used in creative new ways, and it will continue to challenge the definition of what church is and how do you express church. We see this with the way we use text message threads with our friends. Somehow that's community, and it strengthens our physical experiences when we meet. I think some of the deepest community I have right now is in my text thread conversations with my closest friends, but I still get together with them. And so if you want to learn more about this, check out that episode from N.T. Wright, but also check out my book, Online Church is Not the Answer. There's an Audible and a physical copy you can get on Amazon. Thanks for checking that out. If you agree or disagree, let me know. I know this is a fun topic. People have all sorts of opinions when we talk about online church.